Hey, what's up everyone? It's Au5. Today, we're going to talk about color bass. I've been making color bass for quite a while now, and in this tutorial, I would like to show you 6 different techniques to colorize basses. Per usual, in the description, you will find a free sample pack, this time including impulse responses. This video is sponsored by my Cryptochrome walkthrough that I did in collaboration with Doll Nation. It is a full track breakdown where I go over every secret, tip, trick, strategy, and sound for my song Cryptochrome, released on Chime's label Rushdown. When you sign up, you also have the option to download the full project file and a sample pack with every single sound from Cryptochrome. Go check out the Cryptochrome walkthrough in the description. So without further ado, here are 6 different techniques to make color bass. So in this session, I have a bunch of sounds that I made. These are just raw basses, uncolorized, so you can hear how each one of these colorizing methods affects different types of sounds. So the first one I have here is the comb wow. We got laser, growl, stab, and saw drop. And up here I have a track called chord, and this is what we're going to use as a modulator to colorize a lot of these sounds. And this is what it sounds like raw. Just 3 chords. The raw basses are all going through a group, and the group has all these different effects on it, which I will go through. So the first category is vocoders. I have Ableton stock vocoder, Melda M vocoder, and ImageLine Vocoders. It's pretty simple to use vocoders to colorize sounds because all you really need to do is just grab the audio from another source using the sidechain input. So I have my audio routed from my modulators group. Vocoders have attack and release settings as well as band count. So you can get various levels of detail with that. M vocoder is also the same, routing the same way. Multiple bands, whitening effect, form and shift. And ImageLine Vocoders is very similar. So this is what the laser sounds like with the Ableton vocoder. Here's with it off. Here's with the growl. Here's with the stab. Here's with the saw drop. Here's with M vocoder. Here's with Vocoders. Here's the stab with M vocoder. The stab with Vocoders. Here's the growl with the vocoder. And with Vocoders. And here's the laser. So basically how vocoders work is they use the frequency response of whatever sound that is playing, and they imprint that frequency response onto a different sound. What's great about vocoders is they are pretty much 0 latency. The downside is that they have a lot of phase shifting because they have a lot of parallel filters, watery sounding artifacts, which sometimes is really cool. If you want something cleaner than a vocoder, the next section here are FFT morphs. And I have 3 here. FFT vocoder, which is a very inexpensive Max for Live device, Ableton exclusive, Melda M morph, and then Synaptic morph. These are very similar in principle to a vocoder, but they work differently. These are FFT based. Basically what that means is they don't use filter banks. They use an FFT algorithm to take the frequency response of one sound and imprint it onto another sound. It's also known as cross synthesis. So here's how the comb wow sounds with FFT vocoder. Super clean. Here's what it sounds like with Melda M morph. Pretty similar. Melda M morph also has a ratio control. This kind of allows you to blend between the 2 source sounds. So that's just the chord, and that's just the raw comb bass. I can get anywhere in between those. And this is Synaptic morph, and it's very similar. Morph also has different algorithms. So let's go through each one of these with each sound. FFT vocoder on the laser. Growl. Drop. You can hear how the FFT morphs are much cleaner than vocoders. Let's check out M morph on the laser. Growl. Stab. Saw drop. And then lastly, synaptic morph. If I change the algorithm to tight, it will preserve a little bit more of the texture at the expense of the tone. The downside with these FFT morphs is that they introduce a lot of latency. The more texture that's preserved, the less tone is going to come through, and vice versa. Now, this next set of effects are resonators. Ableton Spectral Resonator, Reactor Effects Prism, Synth Audio Resonator, and then just Ableton stock resonators. These don't use an incoming sound source. Instead, most of these use MIDI information. Instead of using audio sidechain input, I am using external instruments to send to these different devices. So the first one is Spectral Resonator. So this is what Comb Wow sounds like. And it's cool because you have decay control. You have dampening control. You also have these stretch and shift features. So let's hear what these other sounds sound like. But it does have these other modes that are really cool, such as the chorus, wander, and granular. And the next one is Reactor Effects Prism. Prism is a resonator that is called a modal resonator. And basically, it uses a bunch of very narrow parallel bandpass filters to filter the sound. Really tasty bell-like sounds with this one. So that's a fun one. And then we have Resonator by Synth Audio. And this is basically a comb filter-based resonator. Each voice here is basically a comb filter that's tuned to the note of the voice. And this can support up to 6 different voices as well with MIDI input. And this has 2 modes. This has the saw and square mode, and you also have decay and color effects. And this sounds like this. Check this one out on the different sounds. The last one here is just Ableton's resonators. Basically just a simpler version of resonator. Unfortunately, it does not actually have any MIDI sidechain input, so you have to manually tune it yourself, but it's still cool. It's also free with Ableton. Then the next category is convolvers. I have Hybrid Reverb, which is a stock Ableton plugin, the Kilohertz Convolver, and M Cabinet, which is kind of like a hybrid convolver / EQ. They need what's called an impulse response, or basically a source sound to use as the filter to basically colorize sounds. Instead of sending a sidechain signal to this, what I'm going to actually have to do is render this chord to audio first. And then I can toss this audio file into the convolver, drag audio straight in. And in this case, it's going to filter any sound that I have playing through it with the entire sample. And that's why the decay parameter is really important. So if I just play this through, it's going to play the entire chord sample that I used. If I reduce the decay, you get a good balance of tone and textural preservation that way. So if I try this with some other sounds, it's really good for more sustained sounds and less sounds that are like articulated, like the stab bass. tends to smear it out. If I turn the attack all the way down and the decay all the way down, it reduces the tone altogether. As I start to increase the decay again, and I get more tone again. Unfortunately, in order to transpose this, you can't really automate the size in most convolvers. You kind of have to just move it to whatever tuning that you want. You're kind of stuck with that note. And this is pretty much the same features with the kilohertz convolver. If I toss this into here and then constrain it, you have some tone parameters. You can also adjust where in the sample you want to use it. So I can get different chords just by scrolling through the different parts. I can also change the tuning with the stretch if I'd like to. It's still a little clunky. That's where M Cabinet comes in. It basically gets rid of all of the time data. It will generate the shortest possible impulse response within the plugin in order to get maximum tone and also maximum texture. And what's cool, you have flattening parameter. You also have smoothing. And you have pitch, which can be automated smoothly. That's super useful. Here's how it sounds in the other sounds. You can increase the smoothing to kind of get more texture in the top end. What's great about convolvers, as well as most resonators, is that they are low or zero latency. Then the next category that I have are match EQs. And the two ones that I have here are Ozone 10's match EQ and the Melda M Freeform Equalizer. So this is a technique that I accidentally discovered back in 2015 when I was making Atlantis. I was trying to EQ match the sound of the chord that I had with a bass that I had. I accidentally stumbled upon this really cool effect, which is basically capturing the frequency response of the chord with the match EQ and then applying that to the bass. With the smoothing all the way down and the amount all the way up, I was able to take the chordal spectrum of the chord and apply that to the bass. So you have two settings here. You have reference and apply to, and you can capture audio from each one of those. What I want to do is take the spectrum from a chord and I want to apply that to any bass or something that I put it on. You're going to need to use some kind of white noise or pink noise source, basically just a flat frequency response to match the chord against. What I'm going to do is hit capture for a reference. So that's the chord's frequency response. Just hit stop and it captures that. And I'm going to use noise generator just to generate some white noise. Let's set it to pink. And then I'm going to hit capture on the apply to part. Then bypass that. And now if I increase the amount and turn the smoothing down, now I have the frequency response of the chord. Now I can put this back onto the basses. You can hear how this imprints the chord frequency response onto the basses. So check this out. Here's how it sounds like on the laser. Growl, stab, and saw drop. This is pretty subtle, not that extreme. This isn't what it was intended to be used for anyway. The more flexible version of this is M Freeform Equalizer. Put that onto the chord, and I'm going to just capture this. Make sure that your smoothing is all the way down. I like to have my range all the way up as well. I'm going to put this back onto the raw basses, and I'm going to analyze target, and I'm just going to analyze silence. If I hit the equalize green to sound like red, that's equalizing the target, which is noise or a flat frequency response, to sound like the chord. It also has this minimum phase mode, which reduces latency. As that sounds like on the laser. Growl, stab, and you can decrease the range to kind of decrease the overall intensity, and then saw drop. In linear phase mode, you'll hear how it smears transients. And what's really great about Form Equalizer is you can open up the toolbar and you can export your sound as an impulse response. You throw that into your convolver. The last effects that we have here are the FFT tuners. And I have retune and the famous pitch map. Now, retune also allows MIDI input. So I already have my external instrument routing MIDI to both the retune and the pitch map plugins. You can see the chords changing. It's kind of like a polyphonic auto tune. It will analyze all the frequencies in the spectrum, and then it will pitch quantize different frequencies that are closest to these different notes. All across the spectrum, it will basically quantize all of the different frequencies of various notes to the closest note in the scale that you have selected on this graph here. Pitch map is the same exact principle. It analyzes the frequencies from all across the spectrum. It determines what the closest note pitch is to the scale that you have being sent to it or that you have assigned to it. I have the live MIDI map button on. Pretty much just by default, if I turn the threshold all the way down, it will tune it. And this is how it sounds. We have a bunch of different parameters. You have feel, purify. Uses a lot of CPU, but it has that really clean, shimmery sound to it. Easily preserves the top end notes and the transients, and then electrify. Which can create some really cool, like dissonant and harmonic sounds. So the disadvantage to these are, yes, they are very CPU intensive, and they also introduce probably the most latency out of all of the different types of filters. Thanks so much, guys, for checking out this tutorial. If you like content like this, then this is just a small taste of what's available in my Cryptochrome walkthrough course. Don't forget to check that out in the link in the description. Also, feel free to leave a comment to let me know what your favorite color-based technique is. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.